Russia is about to sell pork to China. After a 15-year hiatus, China is preparing to resume purchasing Russian pork in the next few months. Sergey Dankvert, director of Russia's agricultural watchdog, Rosselkhoznadzor, stated that his organization has completed most of the export preparations. In September, China lifted temporary restrictions on Russian pork imports following a review of the country's African swine fever (ASF) control system. Beijing imposed the ban in 2008 after the ASF outbreak. Mr. Dankvert said China consumes a lot of pig legs, stomachs, ears, and tails, pig parts that are not common in Russia. Many parts that Russian consumers don't need are considered specialties there, he said. RusAgro, a famous Russian pork producer, will benefit the most from China's decision, according to Moscow-based financial consulting firm Ricom-Trust. The potential for further development of the Russian pig industry depends entirely on exports. In the first quarter, Russia exported 46,800 tons of pork, an increase of 32% compared to 2022. Exports to Vietnam increased by a staggering 130% to reach 18,800 tons, while exports to Hong Kong saw a remarkable 140% increase to reach 1,600 tons. Exports to Belarus increased by 18% to reach 16,600 tons, while exports to Mongolia saw a 44% increase to reach 1,400 tons. The Russian National Union of Pork Producers, RUP, projects that Russia will experience a 5% growth in pork export output, equivalent to 200,000 tons, which will position it as the 8th largest exporter in the world. According to the Russian National Union of Pork Producers, RUP, pork production grew as farms expanded thanks to the government's preferential loan program in 2018. RusAgro once considered building more pig farms near the border or even in China. China is the world's largest pork consumer, accounting for half of total global production. About 60% of the total meat consumed in China is accounted for by pork. In the first 8 months of the year, China imported a total of 1.9 million tons of pork, an increase of 165,000 tons compared to 2022. Sergey Kovalev, chairman of RUP, estimates that the opening of the Chinese market will help export output increase to 400,000 to 500,000 tons per year. If this comes true, Russia will enter the top 5 largest pork exporting countries in the world. Russia will sell pork to China. After a 15-year break, China is ready to start purchasing Russian pork again. Sergey Dankvert, director of Russia's agricultural watchdog, Rosselkhoznadzor, has completed most of the export preparations. China lifted temporary restrictions on Russian pork imports in September after a review of the country's African swine fever control system. China consumes a lot of pig parts not common in Russia, which are considered specialties there. RusAgro, a famous Russian pork producer, will benefit the most from China's decision. In the first quarter, Russia exported 46,800 tons of pork, a 32% increase from 2022. The Russian National Union of Pork Producers, RUP, projects a 5% growth in pork export output, positioning Russia as the 8th largest exporter in the world. China is the world's largest pork consumer, accounting for half of total global production. If the opening of the Chinese market is successful, Russia could become one of the top 5 largest pork exporting countries. This content is mainly for the purpose of learning English vocabulary, English grammar, and English sentence structure. We are learning American English. Thank you for taking the time to watch. Thank you for considering subscribing to see more exciting videos.